Right. Welcome to the living room studio. We're going to have fun today. We're going to do January. Today is the 14th. I haven't done a whole lot. I think I've only actually recorded 3 or 4 jams for the entire month so far, but things happen. But we're going to have fun today. So yesterday, I installed Bitwig. We're going to take a look at that. So let's do that. So here we are in Bitwig. Now, remember, I just installed Bitwig like yesterday. I don't know how to use it at all. I'm just playing around with it and stabbing in the dark. But it does load all my cool synth plugins that I've found. I'm running Ubuntu 20.04, I think. Ubuntu Studio. Didn't have any problems installing this. So let's make some space noises. First things first, we want to have some drones. So what I did is I've got Hive. EWI's Hive 2, fantastic synth plugin. So what I did is I went here and basically went through their pad presets. This is Arc Blue Star. I wanted to find something very pad-like that I could use as a background drone kind of thing, and I just picked the first one. Was like, what the heck, we'll try it. Sounds really nice and spacey. I like that. That works. Very cool. In case you're wondering, the desktop environment I'm using is i3, which is a tiling desktop manager. If you don't know what that is, basically you can open multiple windows and it will arrange them so that there's no wasted space. This kind of takes a little getting used to, but it's extremely lightweight, runs really quickly. That's why I use it. So, all right, where are we? Okay, Hive 2. Okay, so if we want that to be a drone, we have to drive it with some kind of MIDI input. Now, I've got my trusty EWI USB right here. We're going to use this to do some lead lines later on. But for drones, this isn't really good for that. I could use my Verse Lab for something like that, but we're gonna use B-Step Sequencer. I found this, and this is basically what it looks like. This is B-Step Sequencer. Now, it has a lot of power. The interesting thing about B-Step is that it is arranged like a bass, like an acoustic upright bass, or an electric bass guitar. So your sequence is going to be based on 4 strings. In fact, it even calls these your different strings. Now, you can sequence them in a bunch of different ways. You can do probability, velocity, randomization, muting, repeats, a bunch of other sequency things. And you can also specify different sets of chords that you can play. You can either do a sequence or, like here, we're just going to do block chords. So the first thing I did is I wanted to make the first chord in C. We're going to be playing in C. C major. I set the string notes to C, G, D, which is an open-voiced C chord with a ninth, basically. So C, E, G, and this D on top is going to be a ninth. So it's kind of like a spread-voiced ninth chord with no 7. All right? And I figured that would be good for a drone. So this, I'm going to mute this. This is what it sounds like. Really nice. I like that. If you hear pops and clicks, my apologies. My computer's having a hard time keeping up with all this stuff. This is not a high-end workstation. I think this was the cheapest quad-core CPU I could get to get it up and running. So that will get upgraded later on. For now, we're working with what we got. All right, so we've got our pads, and at some point I have B sequencer set on the second sequence. I changed it to an F chord, an F9, which is the 4 in the key of C. So we have C, F, A, which would be F, A, C, and then the ninth on top, which would be G. So this is, it's going to sound a little different, but that is our pad right there. And if I want to, I can add some reverb or something like that to it. We'll do Dragonfly plate reverb. That sounds good. We'll do dark plate, maybe? Let's try that and see how it sounds. Okay, we can make that work. That's good. All right. So the next thing I wanted to add is some kind of ARPy thing, but I don't want it to be too, how shall I put it? There's a certain kind of plucky ARP sound that just kind of screams space movie, you know, like 80s space flick kind of thing. And so for that, I decided to try Dext. Now, Dext is, where is it? Right here. Dext is a Yamaha DX7 emulator, all the way down to where you can actually load actual DX7 cartridge patches on this, and it's 100% compatible. So this, for all intents and purposes, this is a software Yamaha DX7, right? And so I dug through some of the carts. If I wanted to, I can go to here and load some of the different actual Yamaha cartridge sounds and stuff like that. There's places where you can download those for free. And I ended up with this, an electric piano. Now, that's pretty 80s sounding. I mean, that's, you know, that's about as 80s as it gets. Oh, and I added a delay, a dotted eighth delay, and some reverb on it. So without the delay and reverb, it sounds like this. So, you know, pretty 80s. We add a nice delay to it so the duck-a-ducks come out right, and some reverb to just kind of tie it all together. And again, this is a MIDI track that's going to be a repetitive cycle, so we got to drive it with some kind of MIDI sequencer. So I tried this, which is the free version of High RPE 2. This is the full version of this is a Euclidean sequencer with 8 tracks. This is the free version, so it only has like 3 or 4 tracks, which is more than enough. I don't need tons just for this. And I just kind of randomly spread some notes through here. I set the notes to C, D, and G, which is your open fifth and a ninth, right? So it's gonna, or a second actually. So it's gonna give it some kind of some movement here. Let's see what that sounds like. I mean, it's not great, but it'll work for now. We're just playing around anyways. Okay, this is nothing fancy. So if we add that to the pads, this is what our background now sounds like. So it's okay. You know, I mean, we're not Vangelis here. We're just having fun, right? I'm basically learning how to use the program. Some of the things I'll note about Bitwig, I really, really love the fact that you can drag and drop plugins across this whole bottom bar, and everything just automatically connects. I love that. I absolutely love that. Adding in stuff in routing things in Ardour, which is the other big main DAW that it uses, that Linux uses. Ardour is laid out like an actual physical studio console, which is good and bad. You've got really good linear editing tools, you've got really good mixing tools, automation lanes, everything is really easy to do. The problem is it doesn't load all the plugins that I want because it doesn't have clap support and several other things that it just doesn't like. And 2, because of that, routing effects and stuff is just a nightmare, especially with MIDI. I don't like it. And this, in Bitwig, you just drag it in there, boom, it works. I love that. That is huge. So That's gonna, you know, that's worth the price of entry, just that, which is fantastic. So we've got our beginning, our pad, and our ARP. I can bring those down a little bit. Actually, they're kind of loud. We want them to be more suggestive than actually, you know, the thing. That's cool. All right, so you can hear B-step sequencer on the Hive pads moving from the 1 to the 4 chord. You can hear it alternating, which just gives it this great floating ethereal sound. I love that. That's fantastic. I do that a lot when I do guitar ambient stuff. I use that trick a lot. It's fantastic. Okay, so next, we need some kind of lead sound on top of that. So what I did, pulled up Hive again, because Hive is just freaking awesome. Right? Let me turn off this delay and this reverb. And I just pulled up some default Hive presets. Solo stuff. We want leads. So I went to presets, mono leads, and I just said Fry solo. Okay. Now in my mind I'm thinking Glenn Fry? Like The Heat Is On or something like that? I don't know. I'm old. Okay, that's fine. But I figured I'd give it a try. And again, I'm looking for some kind of like Evangelis-y kind of Blade Runner 2001 kind of moogie kind of sound, and so this is what it came up with. You know what? It's not going to work well because, yeah, the cutoff filters are right here. Like, yeah, it's not quite what I want. Okay. Now you're thinking, it doesn't sound very Moog-like. Okay, there's a trick though. Okay, this is what I'm going to show you. So what I have here is, this is my trusty Akai EWI USB. All this is, the USB version is just a MIDI controller. That's all it does. I have octave rollers here. It has 5 octave capability by just touching it. The keys are not, they don't move, they're conductive. So you just touch your fingers on it, and it's very quiet to play. Down here, I have the grounding pad, and these 2 black pieces right here are your pitch wheel. So I can actually bend the pitch up and down, and of course your note keys. And then the breath controller actually controls 2 things. It controls volume, or, well, really it sends 2 CC commands. One of them you can assign to breath control. The other one, when you bite it, it sends a different one that you can assign to the mod wheel. And I think that's how I have this one set up. I have breath control set up with the blow pressure, and I have the bite control set up to mod wheel. I'm pretty sure. That's how it is set up by default. And in Bitwig, it's got a pre-configured script for it. So you just go to add controller. Like if you select this instrument track, down here, you go to add controller, and then you just, you add one and pick Akai EWI USB, and then you tell it to use these physical connections to this, and it just works. So now on our Hive track, for Dext, we're not using MIDI input because we have a sequencer. For the Hive pads, we're not using MIDI input because we have a sequencer. For this one, we're going to set it to Akai EWI USB, and it's going to sound like this. Let me clip this on. So you can tell, like, the breath control, here, I'll pull it up and I'll show you. For this one, watch this cutoff knob here and here, and the mod wheel here. When I blow, oh, that's the pitch bend for the thumb. That's what that is. So watch these cutoff wheels, the cutoff knobs. So the breath control actually controls your filter cutoff, which I find works a lot better than volume control. The volume control on the EWI works really well if you're playing a simulation of an acoustic instrument like a violin or a cello, or a trumpet or something like that. You can assign the breath control to volume, CC number 7, MIDI control change number 7. And that actually gives you a lot of dynamic range because obviously acoustic instruments like that, you're not going to use a filter cutoff for it. So volume control makes sense when you're doing that, like, you know, playing a violin or a flute or a saxophone or whatever. For synths, volume it doesn't really work that well. On certain situations, you can use it with lead tones, but it works so much better if you assign the breath control to filter cutoff. You can do both. You can assign it to filter cutoff and volume, which works pretty well. You can also set the range for the volume so that it's not as off on. You know, the dynamic range isn't quite so large, and that allows you. And when you stop blowing the note, it sends a note off signal. So it's not like, you know, you stop blowing. It's not like the sound is still playing. So you can do that. But this one I think is set just to these cutoffs. So let's play some of that again and kind of get an idea here. Now, if you hear it doing this little, that's just my thumb not being accurate enough. Playing the EWI takes a lot of practice, especially the octave rollers, because your thumb wants to angle downwards, and you can accidentally touch like 2 or 3 of the rollers at a time, and and it'll do like weird, quirky octave jumps. And also, when you're playing across the break, like when you go from a C and then you go up to a D on the next octave, like you have to time that thumb change exactly with the note, otherwise you get like this. Heard it? When I came back down, it did the same thing. And that's just because I'm not switching it exactly. It takes practice. You have to play it a lot. Anyways, so we've got a pretty decent synth sound, and I'm thinking, okay, this can work. This sounds synthy enough. It's got a little bit of edge to it. With the filter cutoff, I can manipulate that. Oh, here's what the mod wheel sounds like. And again, you can assign the mod wheel, the byte control to mod wheel or any other parameter that you want. It doesn't matter. You know, so just whatever you want to do with it, it's fine. So this works. So let's close that, and then we're going to add a delay to it. This is a ping pong dotted eighth delay, which works really well for ambient stuff. And over here we've got big Dragonfly Hall reverb. So that's a pretty good sound. I like that. And again, remember, we're not making anything crazy. I'm not even recording this. I'm just playing with sounds. I'm playing with plugins, just experimenting. So this is my January jam. So we'll do this. We'll start our pads. Here we go. like that. That's pretty cool. So that gives you a pretty good idea. I mean, we're playing around here, we're having fun, but I like Bitwig. I'm not sure if I'm going to stick with it long term, but it's cool so far. I like it. Peace out.